Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Haywood. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Welcome to another episode of Business Growth Talks, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and business owners navigate the complexities of growing and scaling businesses. Today we have Samuel Timothy, who is a Chief Growth Officer for OneIMS. Samuel is an expert in digital marketing with 15 years in online marketing, demand generation, and sales. Samuel is the architect of numerous successful marketing strategies for companies that are growing and scaling. Samuel's experience is with many different industries, including manufacturing and SaaS. Samuel is also a contributor for Forbes and Inc magazine, and he hosts his own show, Coffee with Closers. Samuel is based in Chicago, USA. If you are enjoying this content, then please do consider subscribing so you don't miss an episode. And also you can go to Business Growth Talks for more information. Hello, Samuel. How are you today?
I am super good, Mark. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to go into the first question, which I ask all my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about business mindset, is more so from, I would say, a combination of growth and innovation. Like having a growth mindset that you have an opportunity to fix and grow anything, right? If you put your mind and energy into it. And then an innovation as well, because I don't want things to be the same way every day. There's got to be some sort of an improvement made or something to be worked on, right? So finding a new way to solve business problems or life problems. That's how I would perceive a business mindset.
That's interesting you say about innovation and improving. Is that you're trying to find new ways for your clients, for different strategies that you're looking to deploy? Or are you looking products within your business that you're trying to then innovate and iterate to get better?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, but more so from the first one, right? Because if we look at how the industry has evolved over the years, right? I think, of course, there was newspaper, then became TV, and then radio, then became TV, and then come the internet, and then everything rapidly changed in the last 15 to 20 years. And things that we were starting to do, right? People were able to publish content on their own. Then there was two-way communication. People were to comment on it. Now then we had live communication, right? All of that has changed the ecosystem and how people are able to market and reach their end customers. So you cannot just keep doing the old thing over and over again and expecting a better or different results, right? I think Peter Drucker, I don't know who may have mentioned that, I think is the definition of insanity. So you essentially have to be innovating. And a lot of times I think what we're seeing in the marketplace, especially from having been in this industry for over 18 years, especially some of the legacy industry businesses are very much stuck in the old ways and challenging the changes that are happening and saying, oh, that's just a fad. It's not going to stick around. And then only to find out maybe 5 years go by, they're like, oh, wow, we fell behind so fast, so far behind. So I think that's the reason why I say, if you're in the business world, you have to be innovating. You cannot just sit still. I think if you look at companies like GE, in the way back in the day, GE was very well established company with a really high value for the organization. But if you look at it, it lost its innovative mindset and it became this giant that cannot change. And then I think they've done some in terms of having incubators internally to innovate, internally have smaller product and businesses grow, evolve internally, and also investing into a lot of up and coming startups and tech companies. But they lost its roots of, innovation and technology and all of those things. And then what? They lost their market cap, they lost their market share, lost their lackluster, right? Like in their brand. So I think that's what happens when the company become stagnant and they just don't want to grow and change, and it becomes business is status quo, just going to continue just floating. And I think that has to be worked at on a regular basis. If you want to be in the forefront of the industry, you cannot just sit still and be business as usual. You have to be innovating and you have to be growing.
So all my listeners know that I was in corporate for a number of years, for 12 or 13 years. And one of the things I said working in these large organizations is that it's like a big cruise liner. It's a massive
Mhm.
ship that actually turning the direction of that business takes a long time because it's got to go through checks and balances. They've got to go through various approvals to be able to get it. And I'm just wondering how you, as a business owner, is able to move, pivot, change, adapt in your industry as a company for strategies that you're deploying in marketing, etc. How do you do that? How are you able to keep moving the dial when the bigger you come, the harder it is to be able to move the dial?
Yeah, I think that is the biggest challenge almost all businesses have is like how do you evolve right rapidly, and you have this tendency to get comfortable because you're doing the same thing and you just get used to it and you can just stay in that motion. Big organization, of course, have such big bureaucracy internally that
Mm,
just delays decision making capability and able to respond to market conditions really rapidly because they have a lot of other things to consider, right? They have the stock market to account for. They have the internal stakeholders, they have external stakeholders. So there's a lot of people to please. But I think as an organization is a much smaller and nimble and have that new and innovative mindset, they're able to pivot and do things a lot faster because they're not trying to please a bunch of people. They're trying to change things happen, make things happen. So that's the perspective you're coming from. And I think I'm not for disruption for the heck of disruption or innovation for the heck of innovation. It has to have a purpose and a reason behind it. And I think if you're doing it for the right reason, right? Like you don't, for example, if you asked me 15 years ago, hey, the go write blogs, create content, write more blog, that was the thing. And that was the main thing to focus on. But if you ask me today, we're like, hey, create a lot more short form video content. That's the best strategy to employ. But if you're still stuck in your old way, hey, I'm only just going to keep writing blogs, you're just losing the opportunity, right? So you have to be evolving, whether it be in the marketing strategy or sales strategy or whatever that you might be doing, to essentially be able to adapt to the market conditions and the changes in the industry.
And something I've noticed about advertising, I know this is not exactly your area, but I've seen companies over the years. So Amazon is one where 10 plus years ago, they'd be advertising on, and there's layers of advertising, isn't there? And it's
Mm-hmm.
all based on cost. But I've seen companies like this Athletic Greens, which has been on lots of podcast advertising. They're now moving up radio and television and magazines and things like that. And Amazon was another one that went through different stages of their marketing and
Mm-hmm.
advertising and sales. When you're analyzing a company for the first time, it's a new client that's coming in and they say, look, we've got this budget, we're looking to, how do you decide on their marketing strategies? And is it primarily based on budget, or are there lots of other factors that you look into when you're looking to work with a client?
Certainly, there's a lot of factors. So I think one of the ways that we look at a company is the maturity level of the company's marketing and sales
Right.
system, right? Sales organization. The reason I say that is if you're a brand new company, you're in an established market, you're a brand new player in that market, the strategy that you would use is a completely different one than you're a brand new player, but in a brand new market that you're trying to create a category or you're trying to create a solution. For example, there might be existing product or services that solves a business problem, but you're coming into with a brand new idea that no one knows that existed. The
Yeah.
approaches that you make and the approaches that you take to reach that end customer is completely different than if you're in an established market. There's already existing demand. People are looking for that product and service. You just got to figure out, how do I get in front of those people that are actively looking for my product or services? But the second category that I mentioned, nobody knows that you exist. You're this innovative solution. You have to do a lot of educational means to get in front of your prospective customers and teach them about this alternative, right? This alternative way of solving their business problem. So approaches will vary. And then also, like I said, the business maturity also tells a lot about what you can do. So if you're a brand that's been around, there's a trust behind your company name,
Yeah.
that there's a lot more value that comes with it, that you can do things that other companies cannot. So if you're a new player, it's going to take a while for you to build your brand reputation
Yeah.
and earn that trust before you can get people to actually write checks to you.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
One thing about my upbringing that reflects, I think I'm an immigrant in this country. That brings a level of aspiration, motivation, and almost like a desire to do do the best, right? Because I just listened this morning, even it was actually just a podcast I was hearing, the first generation versus second generation, where when someone comes to a foreign country, you're presented this opportunity, you do everything possible to make sure that you don't waste it, you don't squander that opportunity. But then once the second generation is born, they have much more affluence, they have a lot more they've been blessed in so many different ways, they take it lightly, the opportunities that are presented, and they squander some of that. So I think, being that I was an immigrant coming into this country and my upbringing from a foreign country, right, like really prepared me to take advantage of this land of opportunity that everyone calls the as United States. So that, I would say, is the main thing, because I see people who are much more capable and much more talented and have all of that caliber and college degrees and everything else, have not gotten to where we are. And I only can attribute that to just the hard work and determination and the fear of losing out and fear of squandering the opportunity.
And do you have kids?
I do. I have 4 kids.
And what's your, just following on from that thought process, your kids that have been born in America and have been being educated in that area, do you see a level of, like, how are you instilling that urgency, that need to prove yourself, need to be successful into your next generation?
Yeah, so it's a great question that you're asking me, because that's what I've been trying my very best to instill into my children, because I think I told my children, I didn't have the opportunities that you're getting today. I did not have computer and laptop access. I was
Mm,
having to go to college libraries to
mm.
access computers
Yeah, I
in the
remember that too.
late 90s and early 2000 to
Yeah.
even access my emails. You have 4K cameras, you have video editing softwares, you have AI tools, you have laptops, you have bigger monitors than I could have imagined. You have tools and technology at your fingertips. Even though you're only 12 or 13 years old, you have such more access and exposure to things that I did not have. You don't have an excuse for not being successful. Your lack of success is only because you did not put the time and energy and effort. No one becomes an overnight success. And we often look at Amazon or any of those and say, wow, how did these companies just come out of nowhere? But there were 10, maybe decades of investment and time, energy went into that. Same thing is true for an individual. They have to put the time in. There's no shortcut to success. And I know, I'm sure Instagram and TikToks and everything that makes it sound like it, there is a shortcut.
Oh,
But if you
absolutely.
are, especially in our time and age, the kids could be even more successful than their parents way before they're in their mid 20s, because they can go be an entrepreneurial minded person, take smaller risk because they're still under their parents' shelter. They can do things. So that's what I'm trying to instill in my children. I don't know if I'm doing a great job, because they still haven't really conceived all of the things that I'm trying to share, but I'm trying to do it little by little.
But there's challenges to that with having, like, with social media. And I wasn't intending the show to go into this angle, but I think it's interesting just to explore this because, yes, they've got a lot more technology and they've got so many things that we didn't have when we were growing up. But there are challenges like social media, for example. Kids in
Mhm.
that, like my kids are 7 and 9, but I'm really worried about them hitting teenage years and having social media. And as you say, like everyone thinks they can become successful in 6 months, where
Mhm.
most business like Amazon, it took 10 years before of selling books before they were able
Mhm.
to then branch out into anything else. So what's your thoughts on the challenges that the teenagers are looking into with technology as well as the benefits?
Yeah, and I do think it's all comes down to parenting, right? Like having a philosophy on parenting in terms of how much involvement you want, how much freedom you want to give, how much control you want to have on them. And I think if you instill good character and moral principles in them on what is good and right and what is bad, and giving them the skill set to go and make judgment calls on that. And you do have to allow them to make some foolish mistakes, so they do learn some hard lessons that way. But I think if you can also, if you give that moral compass and then give them a boundary on where they can operate within, I think that's helpful. And I think one of the concepts that I've been trying to get my kids to understand is the whole concept of creator versus a consumer. Trying to
Mm.
get my kids to understand that you don't want to be a consumer mindset. Like you're always just consuming, whether it be buying things just a consumption, right? Or just consuming free content, just spending hours on TV or on YouTube or whatnot.
Yeah.
getting them to understand like, hey, you should be on the other side, creating content, creating valuable resources and tools for others to consume from you. And then the more value you create in the economies, the more is going to come back to you in terms of value to you in the form of money or success or anything else. So getting our kids to understand things that I did not know even in my early teen or even in my 20s, I'm making sure that what I've learned the hard way, that my kids can learn it, obviously a little bit faster than I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole ethos when in the 90s and noughties, if you became a millionaire or decamillionaire, it wasn't till you were 40 or something like that,
Mhm.
40, 45, where now there's
Yeah.
millionaires, billionaire. You've got the Mark
Youngest billionaire.
Zuckerberg and things like
Mhm.
that got to millionaire, billionaire in their 20s. It's just
Mhm.
phenomenal, the speed of things. And that whole idea of failing fast and failing forward, I think is just so important for a growth mindset to be able
Mhm.
to be successful. So yeah, totally agree with that. Look, let's talk about OneIMS. So
Mhm.
how do you help your clients when they're looking for digital strategies to benefit them when they're in the growth stage?
Yeah. So I think businesses as a whole, right? When you think about growth, there's only two things you have to focus on, right? We kind of frame that into what we call our growth formula framework. You have to learn how to acquire customers. You have to learn how to grow it and retain those existing customers. A lot of times, companies are really good either at one or the other, meaning like some manufacturing companies that we've dealt with over the years, they've been around for 20, 30 years, and they have like 4 accounts that are just massive companies just stuck around with them because they've done a great job of servicing them, a great job of producing high quality products, but they've done a very poor job trying to go find new customers. And then we found a lot of newer, younger companies, very fast growth. They've figured out how to acquire customers fast with the social ads and all of those things, but then they're burn and churn, burn and churn, burn and churn. And they've spent all their energy on customer acquisition, but they do a very poor job on how do you grow those accounts? How do you retain? How do you service those accounts? So we've built this framework that we call acquisition plus retention equals growth. On the acquisition side, depending on the industry and everything you're in, that kind of dictates what kind of strategy you would employ. But at the end of the day, if you look at any business, you have, like I was saying earlier, you have some businesses, you have already established market, there's existing demand for your product and services. All you have to focus on, how can I capture that existing demand by being on the intent channels where people are actively looking for that product or services. That being like search engines, right? Google and Bing or anywhere else. People go and put a query in finding the best solution for whatever that product or service is. But if you're a brand new category, you're trying to create an awareness for a product or service that nobody knows existed, then you need to spend more of your energy on creating awareness on awareness channels, which mostly being any place where people are just consuming information or congregating for information. So that could be YouTube, LinkedIn, or any social platform. It's a passive channel where they're just looking for information. But if you just feed them good insights and entertainment and information, they're going to continue to follow you, and they're going to discover that you offer something that they can use to solve their business challenge or their personal life challenges. So on the acquisition side, those are the kind of the two main categories to focus, and the percentage of breakdown depends on whether or not you're in a category or an industry where there's already existing demand or not. So if there's already existing demand, you can spend 80% of your energy on the acquisition side, just focused on that 1 to 3% of the in-market audience that are actively buying. But then there's that 97% of the people may or may not be actively buying. That's where you have to be spending energy on awareness initiative to try to get in front of people. So you might wonder, if you scroll through Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and you discover topics and products and business, and you're like, oh, I've never thought about this, or I never heard of this solution. All of a sudden, it almost become natural for you to go discover, learn more about that company. And then before you know it, you're like actually thinking about making purchases, right? Because they've done something to get in front of you and get into your psyche and educate you about a problem that you didn't even have that in your mind. But all of a sudden you became aware of that problem. So understanding that customer journey and the unaware, problem aware, solution aware, and then consideration and decision, understanding that customer journey, and then being able to tailor your content to educate the customer, get them to become aware, and ultimately consider you as the ultimate option for them when it's time for them to make that purchase decision. So that's on the awareness side of the equation. I'll just pause and see if you have any questions or if you wanted to kind
Yeah.
of.
So
Mhm.
something that sprung up was like essentially something that me and my business partner have been thinking about for our podcast booking service is Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads versus, or social media ads, let's say, versus Google ads. And one of the things that we've been successful in the recent past is using Google ads rather than Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And the
Mhm.
reason why we've decided on that, yes, it's more expensive than scrolling advertising, but there's an
Mhm.
intention behind looking for your service. Where when
Mhm.
you're on a passive social media site, people are scrolling, and they might stop for an ad, they might not stop for an ad. It's been really interesting for us to that whole essence of Google advertising, that you're part way vetting them by them
Mhm.
looking for you or looking for a service like you. So you've explained that depending on where your business journey is, how developed or the
Mhm.
market that you're looking into. But when you're advising a client, would you say that if they've got the money and they've got the intention, that Google ads can be more successful? Or do you think the interrupting someone on social media is a great way of doing it? What, like, how do you distinguish that for your clients?
Yeah, so I can give you an example. So we had like telepsychiatry was not a big deal prior to 2020. Nobody really cared about telepsychiatry. If they wanted to go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, they went and made an appointment, had a face-to-face visit. That was how most of those people made their money, and that's how most people went, right? Because it was a private conversation. You had to go meet them in their office and whatnot. Come COVID, it became almost like a second nature. But in the early days, no one was actually even looking for telepsychiatry. I'm sure it was existing before. So we had a software company that came to us and said, hey, we have this technology. We built it for private conversation and everything. We are trying to turn this into this telepsychiatry technology and sell it to hospitals and medical practitioners to actually use it for this use case. How do we create demand for this? How do I get more people to buy about it? So for a product like that, right, it's not something that you just, people were already, they weren't looking for a technology that was for like telepsychiatrists. So you had to do a lot of education on this sort of an offering. You couldn't just go do Google ads because there was
Mm,
nobody searching for
mm,
telepsychiatry software for whatever, right?
yeah,
And there wasn't anybody searching for it. So it doesn't matter how much money you had in Google ad spend, it wasn't driving them any business. So
right.
we had to take an awareness strategy to say, if if you have patients that you are not able to see, there are alternatives to having in-person visits. The way to do it is virtually, and you have HIPAA compliant and very highly sophisticated software that can actually do this. You had to do a lot of education of medical professionals. So that was done through sponsored webinars. That was done through ads to get people to show up to learn about
Yeah,
this solution. Then by becoming solution aware, then they became brand aware, the company that was doing this promotion. Naturally, then they're like, oh, I think this is worth considering. And then they're like, oh, let's do that demo and then go buy that software. So you have to understand that the stage, that's what I was saying earlier about the
yeah,
kind of the stage of the maturity of the market and the
yeah,
business before you just come up with a solution. So oftentimes I tell my clients, you're self-diagnosing. Like a lot of times clients come in, oh, I need more SEO because I'm not getting leads. Oh, I need paid search or I need Google ads, because they're self-diagnosing. And I'm pretty sure if you go to a doctor's office and just say, hey, give me this medicine, I think this is what my symptom is. Doctors say, hey, hold on a second. Tell me why you're here. What's the
yeah,
reason? But you have to understand, if you have a traffic problem, nobody's coming to your website. You have a conversion problem, nobody's converting off your website. It may not be anything to do with your traffic. You may not be targeting the right persona. You don't have the right content. You don't have the right call to action. You don't have the right offer. There's a lot of other factors need to be looked at. And then, like I was saying, also the market condition, the industry, all of those things also a factor. So there's a lot of moving part. It's hard to say one thing is the root cause, but I'm also very skeptical when somebody just come to me and, oh, just sell me SEO. And I think I need just more SEO, right?
yeah.
That just doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it does depend on the market, because as you say,
Mhm.
if you need to build brand awareness, doing the webinars and doing sales like that, as you say, it's an interesting idea, that if people don't even know that you need the service, they're not going to
Mhm.
search for you. They're going to need to have the brand awareness before. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I would
Um,
just want to add one more thing. So a lot of
yeah,
times the leadership, if they don't understand this concept, they invest money into marketing, they see less than ideal results, that they
yeah,
write off an entire tactic or write off an entire channel saying that doesn't work, right? So what happens is, especially like in an early stage business with no prior brand awareness, Nobody knows about this product offering. They're trying to get into the market. They've tried Google Ads. It didn't work. They're like, oh, Google Ad doesn't work. But they haven't really sat down to think, well, why didn't it work?
Yeah.
What was the term that we used? Were people actually looking for this? Where did we send the traffic to? What were we asking them to do? And a lot of times I also have seen with especially like SaaS companies, they're asking for people to schedule a demo. A demo is a very time-consuming commitment that somebody is having to make to book a time on demo. But are there less time-consuming commitments they can make to see if it's the right solution for them? Can we give them a little bit of a teaser? So you have to think about all these other psychological things that goes on through the mind of a person that just ended up on your website before they just fill out a form, and then writing off Google Ads because nobody booked a demo on your site.
Yeah, I get that. When I was doing the research on you, you said that there's no such thing as a boring industry in digital marketing, which I thought was a great quote. But how do you approach market expansion in industries that are less dynamic than maybe like SaaS services and things like that?
Yeah. So are you referring to, so we happen to be in the Midwest in the United States, and it's a hub for a lot of manufacturing companies.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of clients in industrial flooring, injection molding, thermoforming, electropolishing, all kinds of weird stuff that I didn't even know existed. The opportunity that we saw was most of these companies relied heavily on trade shows and industry journals or industry listings. There's one or two listings, a Global Spec, ThomasNet, and a few other places where these companies get listed. The problem with that was if you go to trade shows, most people are just trying to sell each other, and the people that come there is the time suckers. And what was also happening is these industrial companies have engineers that are very highly skilled and expensive resources go to a trade show for 2 or 3 days, travel time, hotel stay, trade show booth, all of that expenses. When you add all that up, it's expensive time and energy spent to go to a trade show to grab maybe 20 or 30 or sometimes 100 business cards. And when you do the math, it's like an average business card cost them $1,000, sometimes even $2,000. But they never sat down to think, oh, shoot, man, we just spent $1,000 for that business card, hoping that someday this guy's going to buy from us, right? Or they're going and spending money on ThomasNet or any of these directories where they have 30 of those same type of companies listed on that same list. And then a buyer just goes and fill out a form for every one of them. And then now is a race to the bottom, competing on price because you have no differentiators, because every one of you are found on that one same page, right? Like that same listings on ThomasNet. So what we saw was the opportunity was all these guys were living in the 1980s, not even in the 90s. Like they had horrible websites, no CRM, no technology in place to track success, no standardized processes for sales or even marketing. So we were able to get in there, understand the business, and say, you have invested into so much. Like these companies go invest into robotics in the back end and ERP system for operations and quality controls and precision engineering and all of those things. But in the front end, they got nothing. Like they don't even have like an Excel spreadsheet sometimes of all their customers. And we're like, where's your database? We don't have it. What do you use for CRM? Oh, we don't have it. What's your sales process? Oh, that's Joe just calls. He's got a Rolodex of people. He just calls them up and he's got the relationship. And then gradually what we started seeing was the Joe is getting retired. So is the guy on the other end that Joe always calls is getting retired. Now the younger generation is coming to that same seat Joe is sitting in, and he has no idea what a Rolodex is, let alone going to pick up the phone and dial, right? So Joe's dependence on the supplier or the customer kind of constantly coming back. That reliability, loyalty is no longer there either. Nobody's committed to a company and keep buying from that same company. So we saw an opportunity that we have to change this paradigm. This is not the way you would run a business. Just like you have an operational efficiency in the back office to run a production facility, so should you have in the front office to have a systematic process to drive consistent flow of traffic that converts a certain percentage of people into inquiries, certain percentage of books a meeting that turns into an opportunity, a certain percentage turns into a customer. You know the average deal size and you know what the average closing percentage and the time it takes to close. And you can systematize the whole thing and you can track the entire journey, have a dashboard just like you in the back office that shows the number of machine and the number of units that are coming out. You can see the number of leads in the funnel, how many are actually in the different stages, and where are we dropping the ball, right? Because if we're not following up and we're not picking up the phone and we're not responding back to them on RFQs, then we can also see that visibility. So that was the revelation that we got when we were talking with these companies. And we're like, man, we have to figure out how to help these guys. So that's essentially how some of these things that I've described in terms of our growth formula framework, because these guys were good at retention. They had no problem servicing the customers, but they
Yeah.
just didn't know how to get customers.
Yeah.
So if we can just help them do both really well, and they
Mm.
were giant companies in the market pretty fast. So that's what we said. There's no boring industries, because when we go make them sexy by helping them create better websites, better content, better visuals, better videos, all of a sudden their stuff looks so amazing and is interesting things to see. And people who come onto their website, they see all that information. They're like, oh, this is a trustworthy company. I can tell. It's not some website from 1980 that I can't even, it's a clunky site that I can't even navigate. So that's how we've been able to evolve and help. So I don't think any industry is immune to any of this, right? Like they all have the ability to grow, and SaaS companies are just more forward thinking and innovative naturally, because they're younger people, tech enabled companies. So they have adapted some of these things much early on. It's just the legacy industry is just very slow to adapt. And then that's part of the reason why I even said innovative mindset has to be part of any organization. It doesn't matter what size you're in or how old you are.
Yeah, 100% agree. How is AI shaping the future of digital marketing?
Yeah, so I think it's certainly going to have a big impact on every industry, and marketing is no exception. I think the way that it can help all of us is how can it augment what we already do, right? So things that we used to take a lot of time to sit there and strategize and think through, we can turn that into a prompt, ask questions, and get possible responses. Then we use our life experience to decide, does that stuff make sense? Or things that would take hours to craft, now you can speed up the process to improve what you may have created. So that's essentially where we are seeing the opportunity. The other thing is we've all probably in the last 15, 20 years ago, if you lived in that time period, you probably heard the big data. I'm pretty sure you've heard that in the early 2000s, right? As soon as the SaaS industry started to pick up, you had nothing but data. But the problem wasn't the access to data. The problem was the insights. Like you have all these numbers, but what am I doing with that information? So AI is going to be able to look at data that you have and provide insights on what action should you be taking, whether it be, should I be buying that inventory? Should I be stocking that item? Or should I even carry this product? Should I offer this service? You want that sort of insights from your historical data and probably predictive data based on some sort of a past historical stuff, right? So that's where we see the AI, right? And of course, it's going to replace some repetitive tasks. It's going to certainly replace some work that is needed, but still you're going to need some human intervention. I think where we as service companies and product companies, where we have an opportunity is not to be afraid of it, but how can we leverage it to improve what we do, gain more efficiency, be more competitive in our marketplace, right? Have that as a competitive advantage, as opposed to hoping that it's just going to go away, just like everything else we've hoped it would go away, right?
And the thing with and the thing with AI is I'm having this conversation with lots of more intelligent than I am, and they're saying, look, AI is like the chat GPTs or the co-pilots or the bards are so valuable, but you do need to sense check it with your expertise, with your knowledge, and it can't just be a lift and shift, because currently there are limitations. Like there's some things where ChatGPT is very vague on, or in some cases not very accurate at all. Now, and that's what something that I urge all my listeners and viewers is that these tools are incredibly powerful and are only going to become more sophisticated and better at what they do. But there does need to still be that expert, that person in the knowledge that can filter through the good bits and the bad bits. Are you finding that people are, it's still very early days on ChatGPT, but are you finding that people are becoming dependent on it too quickly and not doing enough on the sense checking?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of content being put out by these kind of AI tools that's going to expose a lot of people, right? For if we're to do fact checking, I'm pretty sure you can find some of those things. I do think as we get more acquainted with these AI tools, we're going to become more and more dependent on it. I almost on an everyday basis, I'm using to rework my emails, rework my statement of works, or even just assess agreements that someone sent to me, uploading that document, asking ChatGPT to tell me what sort of a clause that I should be aware of that might be not so favorable to us. So there's so many ways that you can leverage it. You just need to use your imagination a little bit. But I do think all these tools have its place, and also we all still care about human touch. So I think one of the ways that we're trying to help our customers to differentiate, especially from a content side, is everybody is a blog writer today. Everybody can publish on LinkedIn a text post, but people actually connect with the person's face. Why are we sitting here having a video conversation? So it doesn't matter how advanced the AI gets, and until it gets deep faking you and me sitting here and talking, it's going to be a while before that happens. So if we can create more short form and video content educating our customers, your competitors is just still strictly doing more blogging and everything else, you have a higher chance of connecting with your customers and your buyer and earn their trust and possibly lead them to make a purchase decision with you than whoever else might be in the marketplace. And that's what I was saying earlier. 15 years ago, hey, blogging was the only thing you needed to do to get in front of people, but now that's not the only option, and people are actually making purchase decision by seeing someone's face on a short form video and hearing about their product or business, and then leading to a purchase decision much later on.
Yeah. Talk me through the early days of OneIMS. What challenges did you face setting up the business and growing it?
Yeah, so we've been at this for 18 years. A lot of evolution happened. I think the dumbest thing that we've made was we started this company in the middle of a economic downturn. We did not even know that we were in the thick of a downturn because we were a bunch of kids out of college and just was getting into a business. But quickly realized, oh wow, we are living in a crazy time in history. So understanding the market conditions and adjusting your pricing offering, adjusting your service offering to align with the market is one lesson we've learned. One of the big lessons we've learned is the importance of diversification that really helped us during COVID time. There's been a lot of agencies that they say, oh, niche down, focus on one industry, offer everything so you can have a lot of efficiency and cookie cutter offerings. But then we also saw a lot of companies disappear during COVID because they focused on hospitality as a sector, they focused on logistics as a sector, and they had customers just canceling left and right, and they had no reliable customer base to sustain their growth. So we were fortunate enough to have our business and our book of customer base diversified. The other lesson we've learned is obviously the importance of some sort of a specialization, not a generalist model. Early days, we were just taking money from anybody who said, hey, I needed a logo, I need a business card, I need a banner ad, whatever. We would just take money because someone wanted to pay us. Later on, what we learned is that, hey, we don't want to be everything to everyone. We want to have some level of specialization that we can use to help companies. It will give us a competitive advantage. It also gives us operational efficiency, but it also gives us much more joy in life because we're not trying to pull our hair, trying to figure out how to solve this problem, because everybody wants something unique and different. So those are some things that I would say: learning about the market condition, diversifying your customer base, and then obviously trying to have some level of specialization in your industry.
And something we talk about a lot on this show is about systems and processes. When did you find the importance of systems and processes to really be able to grow your business?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, I call this, I don't know where I got this concept from, it's the thinker versus doer function in an organization. If you have a lot of thinkers that can also do, you can get away without having a lot of documentation and SOPs. But when you have a lot of doers but don't have the thinking skills, then you're going to be suffering because you can't get these people to produce the quality output that you're expecting. If you cannot distinguish between those two functions in your company today, then you definitely need to be working on doing that. But if you have a lot of doers in your company and you need to start like delegating responsibility and tasks to those people, then it becomes almost a requirement. So we learned very early on the importance of documenting some of those things. But the challenge that we have in our industry is our industry changes so rapidly. So you can create a screenshot of how to go access a Google Ads account yesterday, and today morning they changed the login button. So that documentation kind of ages. So you have to figure out reading between the lines skills has to be there for that individual. So you give them framework and best practices on how to do a task. Hey, here's how we do keyword research at OneIMS. Here's our best practices that we look for. Here's the things that we avoid to make sure that we have the best output. We give instructions on that, and we're expecting our team members to have the skill set and the thinking power to be able to fill in the void, right? Because you can take screenshots and expect everything to be like documented to that level, because we're not a burger shop trying to teach somebody how to assemble a burger. We're actually a creative shop that needs to have some sort of a framework for how to establish and do certain things in our service line. And then they just need to have a little bit of that expertise and industry knowledge to be able to fill in the void.
Yeah. And how have you managed with the expansion to keep like company values and quality of service that you're providing to your clients intact when you're growing and expanding?
Yeah, to say that I have it all perfectly figured out, I would be lying. So that's been an evolution as well. So as the company evolved over the years, there's definitely been a lot of challenge that we ran into, especially team structure, having to, because the early days, my brother and I thought a flat organization was a great strategy, give access to the leadership, open door policies, all of those things were great aspirational goals. Then what we ended up finding out was that we didn't have the time or bandwidth to answer questions from every team member. We did not have the time or access to ability to answer client requirement requests. So quickly we really learned the hard way, like there's no way we can do a flat organization. We had to have an organizational structure that can operate. So we started with small organizational structures, and even that wasn't sufficient because we had a lot more direct reports than we were humanly able to handle. So we had to install additional level of organization structure. But as far as the company culture, it's still a struggle for us because we're a distributor workforce. And when you have people across different time zone, different continents, it's not easy to communicate your values that you've created 18 years ago. So as new people come on, there's always going to be diluting that value system that you've created and then trying to find things that you can do together to instill those values. So we have company-wide meetings every Monday morning. We have all sorts of things like that we try to do to get everybody on the same page. But it's still a very big struggle trying to keep that momentum and growth and that family feel as you try to grow and evolve across multiple countries.
And I'm deliberately asking you an unfair question here, so I
Mhm.
apologize beforehand. What do you think is most important in your business? Leadership, culture, or talent?
I think, oh man, if I do I have to pick one?
Yeah, sorry. It's unfair. I told you at the start.
I think if you have the right leadership, it will trickle down into everything else you've just mentioned. Because what I've learned in the hard way was sometimes in the early days, we kept people around because we thought the person who had the skill. But then we learned hard way they did not have the will. So you can get people who has the will but don't have the skill, and you can improve them to get to the next level they need to get to. But that personality type, their fit for the company, all of those things matter. So I would say if I had to choose one, the leadership really is the key because that definitely influences the rest of everything in your company.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years for you, Samuel?
So we've been at it 18 years. So the 2 year mark to get to that 20 years is definitely certainly a lot of aspiration of goals because there's a lot of stats around, right? Like companies that survive 1 year, 5 year, 10 year mark. So we've certainly seen a lot of ups and downs and got to where we are, and definitely through a lot of hard work and certainly through God's provision in some sense, I would say. So I have some aspirational goals, and also I'm at a time in life that I'm getting near that midlife crisis age. So I am not 100% sure where we are, but I think we're trying to get more productized in our offerings is what we're trying to do. Again, we've learned and evolved and became a lot more specialized, but we're trying to figure out a balanced model that we can actually productize what we do to make it even more efficient and easy for our customers to buy as well.
Another unfair question. Do you have an exit plan? Do you have a plan of where you want to
So
be?
that's part of that 2 year mark, right? So part of what my goal is that may not be a completely 100% exit, that if I can reduce my daily responsibilities of a lot of the thinking that I'm having to do and the operational involvement in the next 2 years, and if I get more time freedom, I don't necessarily have to exit, right? Because it certainly is a profitable business that runs like a machine, but it still have a lot of responsibility that falls on myself and my brother. So my dream in the next 2 years, how can I remove myself as much as possible from the day to
Oh,
day that it actually frees me up? So I enjoy the thinking part. I enjoy the problem solving, but I just don't want a lot of the other administrative operational stuff. So we have the Eisenhower, the quadrant, like when you look at the urgent, important, and all those things, I'm often looking at the stuff that I don't want to be doing, right? The stuff
right.
that I'm not very good at, I don't enjoy doing, the things that are just undesirable to me. So if I can get those out of my plate and completely be removed, one being like, I don't even want to have to check my email. I want to have, and I do have an admin assistant that actually helps me with it. I still have to be involved in it. But if I can just have certain things be completely be not in my inbox,
Yeah.
that would be a great relief. So that's
Yeah.
my dream come true.
Yeah, you need an operations guy. You need someone to do all of that. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quickfire questions. They don't need a quickfire answer. They're a little bit thought provoking. So, the first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
I think starting this business was definitely one of the best decisions because it's given me the time freedom, financial freedom, and the lifestyle that I can only have dreamt about. And I think it wasn't for this business, I would not have had that.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
One advice is definitely don't overthink because oftentimes overcalculating can also delay decisions.
Who's helped you most in your career?
Certainly the partnership that have had with my brother to build this
Uh,
company.
and is there anyone else? Have you ever had mentors, coaches that have helped you with certain things?
Yeah, we've certainly gone through several different coaching programs over the years, EOS and eMyth and all of those different ones. Yes.
Tell me about a regret that you have.
Regret. We've made a very poor business decision to partner with a company that cost us almost $1 million.
Oh, that sounds
Mhm.
painful.
Yes.
How did you don't have to go into in depth about this, but was it just we need to stop this partnership? It's not working, and you
Yeah,
pulled
so
out?
it was a white labeled service model that we engaged in where we were fulfilling for a company that only had
Right,
a phase but no fulfillment model. But
right.
that financial structure was not profitable for us. At the end of it, when we were not able to continue, they walked away from an open invoice that was pretty sizable, and when we couldn't recover it.
Wow. Okay, that's one of the most honest answers I've had for that question. Thank you for your honesty. What are you most proud of?
I think it's the family that I've been able to build. As I mentioned, I have a family of 4. I'm homeschooling my kids, and I have the ability to have my wife stay at home and give them a lifestyle that is very comfortable. So I'm super proud of that accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. Family is so important. And why do you do what you do?
I think I'm on a mission to help 10,000 companies to go from obscurity to market dominance. And I don't know if I can do that just by a service company. And I do believe information and education is the way to do it. So that is one of the driver that I have. And one of my passion would be to go invest more time into creating content and training resources. That's why I want to eliminate a lot of the responsibilities that I have today.
Amazing. And what does legacy mean to you?
Yeah, so I mentioned the age that I'm approaching. So certainly have become, right? In the early days, it was income focused, and now I'm more impact focused. So trying to figure out what does that mean, and essentially even getting my kids to understand the importance, right? I was mentioning earlier some of those things. For me, legacy is if I can have children that follows God and have respect for others, love others, and also have a good moral compass and character, that's a great legacy. Not just that I've given them a good place to stay and food to eat.
And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, find out more information about you or your business?
Yeah, most certainly the easiest way to get would be oneims.com, oneims.com. And I do have a podcast called Coffee with Closers. And then I am completely always publishing content on LinkedIn and YouTube and everywhere else. But if you just go to the company website, you should be able to find all the information.
And just on that, to give you a little bit of a shout out. So just tell me about your podcast before we close.
Yeah, Coffee with Closer. I started it. It was right before COVID. We used to do it in our office where Chicago is a very tech hub heavy place. And I had a lot of founders would come to our office and do interviews. And that's how it got started. And over the years, it just became a virtual interview style. I've done over 150 episodes so far. All I do is interview founders about their founder story, lessons learned, and advice for other entrepreneurs. So it's called Coffee with Closers, and you can find it on YouTube.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you having me today.
Cheers. So I'm not sure if you realize this by listening or watching that episode. That's Samuel Timothy. And we actually had his brother Solomon on a few weeks ago. And what a different story, a different way of approaching things. So Samuel at the moment seems very operational, very much in the detail of what he needs to do for his business. You just listen to what he talked about, the digital marketing world. This guy is hugely knowledgeable, has a great depth of knowledge on digital marketing and also the sales side as well for his business. But we were just talking off air that he wants to be less operational and still have the business, which I think is a really great idea. So it's the guy knew his stuff when it came to digital marketing. I was super impressed with what he spoke about with his company and with his clients as well. And I wanted to ask about AI, because AI is going to impact all of our businesses, and very sound, knowledgeable, understanding the pros and the cons of AI. So I thought that was really interesting as well, what he said. A lot of the things that I've been thinking about using ChatGPT and all the other options, I think that was very smart. He'd obviously wanted to build a strong culture in his business with his employees, which it sounds like he has been able to do. Different challenges while the business grows, absolutely. That's something that I've heard many times by guests on my show. But the quality of service that he wants to provide, I think, is really critical for him. And I think that's what he's been able to do at OneIMS. And just being in a service industry. So I'm in the service industry as well. And it's a really interesting space for being able to provide quality service to your clients, make yourself profitable, make yourself have growth and scale. Very interesting conversation. I was someone hugely knowledgeable in his area. So it was an absolute pleasure speaking to him. If you've got any thoughts on what Samuel was saying, please do leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Samuel and his business. But thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you and to Samuel as well. And on to the next one.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.